what do you think of your train? Like, let's talk before the race. Are you happy with training heading into it?
Training, yeah, mileage, training program. I'd say, I don't know, mostly the summertime, June, July, and August, whereas the majority of, when I was really kind of starting to lock in. When did you were at the beach July 4th week, something like that. And that's when we were kind of starting to focus. We were counting down 8 weeks out, 7 weeks out. So it definitely got a little bit more intense at that point. But yeah, I mean, I felt really confident with the mileage, the types of runs, the how I was feeling during the runs going into it. So I wouldn't change anything on the mileage plan.
Yeah, I mean, I have some ideas which we'll get into later on going forward. I mean, I might have done too many miles and got myself a little injured, but
yeah,
that did not set me back at all. I mean, there's so many things I want to get into it, but like, it couldn't have been better. I mean, I called it the flawless 50 at 50 in. I mean, if you and I are feeling that good at 50, we did something right.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. I even now today, 3 days after the run, my legs are almost entirely back to normal. Body feels great. So almost little to no real like running discomfort during the race. So yeah, I mean, I was very confident going into the run, at least where I was at from a training program perspective. So I had high expectations.
Yep. So what do you think about, I decided to go early and then you decided to show up early with me. I don't think that was any issue. What do you think?
No. Yeah. No, I just enjoyed the whole event so much from the beginning to the end. I mean, you're like I am. I actually like the preparation, the packing, the planning, kind of the process of like managing your anxiousness and excitement all the way up to, when the race starts. So being there the morning of, it was also a beautiful day, right. So it was just nice to be out there, relax. See, I liked watching how other people prepped, how they set up their station, what they had for gear, for tents, and hearing people talk just kind of, about strategy and what their expectations were for the day. So I really enjoyed those first couple of hours before the event started. And I knew from the second I woke up, I wasn't going to be able to sit around the house and not get ready and get to the field. So
right. What'd you think when you first got there and you saw the place? Is it what you expected, the setup wise? I know we both weren't prepared for the moist grass. I had thought about it a little bit more, but
right. Yeah. I mean, since we had run the track before and kind of had a lay of the land and understanding how the field laid out, that was helpful. So it was kind of what I was envisioning, it was what I had expected. I definitely would pack and prepare differently, for the next backyard ultra, as far as like what I bring, how I bring it, how I stage it throughout the night, that kind of stuff. But in general, the setup was enjoyable.
Yeah, I was kind of glad I guess I couldn't picture how tight the spots would be, but I mean, they set up the spots by how, when you registered. And
right.
We were what, 47, 48, 40. I forgot my number.
Yeah.
But there wasn't even if you had the worst spot in the whole thing, it was still manageable.
Right. Yeah, there was no real bad spots. And I actually kind of like where we are. Yeah, everything was spaced out fine. So yeah, it was good. Did you sleep in the tent? Did you?
I was gonna get to that. It was restful. I definitely didn't fall asleep. I kind of tossed and turned. I laid there. It was nice though. The ground was really cool on the bottom of the tent. It just felt good to like cool down a bit because the day was warming up pretty quickly.
Right.
When I was in there, did you just kind of wander around? Is that when you saw the other people's setups and stuff, or?
I think I just kicked my feet up. I pulled another chair up, put my feet up, and just kind of relaxed. And yeah, I could hear a few folks behind me talking, and just kind of watch people as they started to come in too, to get set up.
Yeah, and it was a top-notch setup. I mean, I don't know how they could set up much better, especially early on, like having a couple kids helping out, bring stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just little extra touches that make the race special.
Right.
Yeah. So let's get into the race itself. So what are your thoughts leading into it? Like, so you were confident. You were more confident than I was because I had a little injury that I was worried would pop back up.
Right. Right.
Which quickly went out of my mind.
Yeah.
But what do you think, strategy wise? I mean, did it kind of play out like you thought in let's say like the first 25, 50, whatever?
Yeah, it did. I mean, I knew that the hard work wasn't going to start until midnight, right? So we started at 12 p.m. and it wasn't terribly hot. So like the daytime running was really enjoyable, especially when you got, into the trail. It didn't have a lot of sunlight. So, you weren't overheating, and there's plenty of people. So it's like a good vibe. Everybody's early on, like talking, having fun, enjoying the run. So the first 6 hours, right, till 6 p.m. Is the first marathon. And that was entirely like a warm-up. I felt like every lap felt the same. No tweaks or, concerns. It was all just warm-up. It was just like a 4-mile warm-up every single time. So I really liked that first part. And then we knew that, as the race went on, after major milestones, like after the first marathon, after the first, 50K, 50 miler, people would start to drop out. So I was kind of looking forward to the herd thinning out a little bit, and then getting into the nighttime hours, which is really my two big wild cards for me. Was just overall distance, like how far could I go, and the other one was how was I going to feel in a lack of sleep, right? So like that 4 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. that I just had never run on, no sleep. I didn't know, but first 50 miles, yeah, I every lap felt the same. I did have some knee issues in mile 35 to 40 on some of the hills going down, but that went away. So
yeah. So let's talk about, like, you and I didn't really have a real strategy on how to deal with the crowd. We kind of talked about it a little bit, but like,
yeah,
I kind of liked what we did, kind of getting a little bit more towards the front, but not trying to. Well, we did one lap where we kind of I gunned it out at the front,
yeah.
but so I think that worked out well. Would you agree? Like, kind of that we weren't stuck, because at first I was thinking let the crowd kind of go and stay in behind and just kind of take it easy, but I think you sacrifice too much rest time. Maybe.
So overall, I have a different philosophy on my next backyard ultra.
Yeah, let me hear
it. I would drastically reduce the rest time, especially in the first 50 miles. And so I would stay at the back of the pack. I would try to exert as little effort in the first 50 miles as possible and come in somewhere between 52 and 55 minutes. Because in the first half of the race, I just didn't feel like the rest added anything.
But do you think the rest took anything away either? Because I know later on when I'd rest, I would stiffen up. But the first marathon and a half, I didn't feel anything. Like, it was just, I'm going back out for a run. So did it hurt? More rest, you think?
No, but I think the pace on the trail, right? So,
Gotcha.
Just pushing hills a little bit faster than you need to, being in the front of the pack. So I would have just taken a more leisurely approach to the first half, just from a energy efficiency standpoint.
I got to point out, you were previously talking about not doing that. You were kind of more the go faster kind of guy between the two of us.
Or the day of the race?
No. I'm talking previously when we talk about strategy and stuff.
Right. Well, I do, because I prefer running. Right. I mean, the backyard format is very difficult because at the end of the day, I'd rather continuous movement. That's I feel better that way, even if it's at a slow pace. So I thought just keep a steady pace and then, take your break. But yeah, after doing it, I never felt like more than 10 minutes was ever, needed. And I don't know, maybe the first 26 miles is all irrelevant. But I definitely know I know we pushed 45 to 55 in that window. We pushed hard. So some of our fastest laps, where we were coming in front of the pack, 47 minutes, 48 minutes, and we got plenty of rest on the back end. But I think I pushed my heart rate too high on those laps, and then started to feel the digression, afterwards. So that I would change. And the other thing too is just watching the guys that did go the distance. I think they walked more of the hills, and they came in pretty consistently in the low to mid 50-minute range. So
right.
I would like to try that, see how it benefits,
especially on a course. I mean, it's an extremely difficult course that we were running. I mean, those hills, it makes a big difference. I'm kind of the mindset that the first 25 are kind of irrelevant. Just stay comfortable. But I do, yeah. But then I think, I'm not sure. I liked our strategy. Well, so part of my thing, I really hated being in a group. I didn't mind for a little bit, and then I was like, I want to be away from the group. And at least our little hill strategy got us space. Whenever we wanted it, we could get some space.
Right.
I really did like that.
Yeah.
But
why did you not like being in the group?
Like, okay, I didn't really notice this so much until after you dropped out. Okay, or when you fell behind that lap. All of a sudden I was behind what's his name? The guy that won.
Ed.
Ed. I was behind Ed for a little bit. And he just kind of snakes left and right, like he's cutting the corners, every corner. And he's running on like, oh, there's the nicer spot to run in. There's the nicer, and it was for like a couple laps. It was kind of enjoyable just to kind of like navigate the path. Where when you and I are running, you're on the left, I'm on the right. When there's more people, and then the juices in my head are going, passing me. I gotta pull away. All the competitive things I'm trying to like squash.
Right.
I liked being around people and chatting with them on straightaways, but when it came to corners, like, man, I'm doing extra.
I get it. Yeah.
But I did like, but I also didn't think I was exerting much on the hills. But I do think maybe like us picking a tree and like going, like we probably went a little far. It's just like, I was thinking you were actually handling it easily. I didn't realize you felt like your heart rate was going. I felt like I was the one more complaining about my heart rate and how fast we were going.
Yeah, I mean, just in the scheme of things, like I felt great on each lap, until the very end. But in hindsight, I'm looking at it more as just like energy conservation and efficiency over the duration, right? So, each individual lap might feel okay, but what did you exert on that particular lap that you didn't necessarily have to, right?
Without doubt.
And that's like that. That's I think over the course of 24 hours, that's a huge. It builds up. It can accumulate and can also snowball as well.
Without a doubt. So what'd you think when so nighttime settles in? Like now we're getting into more of the meat of the race. How'd you feel? What'd you think? Was it what you expected?
Yeah. I love night running. I mean, I don't do a lot of it from a like training and safety. I mean, when are you going to go out at 2 a.m., other than like our early morning runs, especially in the wintertime. But the ability to run through the night, I just like the feeling of, the darkness, and it starts to quiet down. It's a lot more peaceful. The less racers, less people actually on the trail. And it does cut the race up a little bit. It's just, you're seeing things differently. You're paying a little bit more attention to your stride and to the obstacles on the course. So just the whole experience of running at night was great. And the big goal for me was to get to the morning. You know what I mean? That was like the next major milestone. It's just, all right, let's see the sun come up and see where we're at.
What'd you think of Ed's setup with the belt light and the headlamp? I don't know if you noticed if he had that, like, because my eyes aren't great. I almost should run with glasses, I think, so I could see what I'm stepping on a little bit better. Right. But I was imagining like he's really seeing the ground crisp, like there's shadow casting at a different level to avoid. I was always the whole time I felt like any step could be the one that my ankle goes because I just don't see a rock or I don't. I felt like I was kind of leaving it up to chance a bit there, just running around.
And we both bit it. So
yours is so
I
much
think
more impressive.
it was barely a scratch. I think it was just my heart was pumping at that point. I think we both had, the fact that we were running pretty much side by side, both had headlamps, add a little bit more illumination to the track.
Yep.
I probably could use a better headlamp. One spotlights a little bit more, and the other one is kind of a larger field of vision, so I could play around with that a little bit. But in general, that didn't concern me too much, other than just paying attention and picking up your feet. When I fell, I was in a daydream, right? It was the real risk is when you're just not paying attention. And as long as I'm paying attention, I was able to navigate it pretty easily.
Yeah, there was a couple. I noticed Eb was running. There was a couple spots were rough, like looser rock, and I noticed towards the end that he'd go over the side and run on the moss.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, there's no rocks over there; it's moss, and that was nice. One of my favorite moments, and I want to talk to Jason about this. Jason Geroux.
Gonya.
No, do I have the wrong name?
Oh, Geroux, the Maine Viking, yeah.
Right. When you and I passed him, middle of the night, and he's like, "You guys are crushing it. For first timers, you guys are crushing it."
Right.
Like that was like, baby, we're on the map.
That was a positive takeaway for me too, because we really were. So a couple big things for me were, regardless of whether or not the strategy worked, you and I were pretty much locked in the entire time, right? Yeah. There was never a time when I felt like I was out in front or you were behind. We just same pace. We were in agreement on both the inclines and the declines. I could tell there was times where we both wanted to talk, and then there's times where we wanted to just kind of like zone out. So that for 18 hours of us being pretty much on the same page and keeping a steady pace, right? So neither of us had a bad lap in the first 70 miles.
Yeah, there was times where I wanted to get away from a certain person that was talking too loudly too much.
Yeah.
And I'd pick up the pace a little bit, or I'd notice you pick up the pace a little bit, and every time that happened, I was like, "Yep, I'm perfectly fine with this right now." And then we drop back.
Exactly.
Like, it is kind of shocking how in sync, because we don't run together,
right? Right.
But we really were. Either we just had a really good strategy and we both were using it, but I think we were really well in sync, except for that one time you chugged that hill, 2 hills in a row. I'm like, what is he doing? He's chugging, and you're like, isn't that what we usually do? I go, yeah, but not that fast.
Yeah, I think I just was zoning out and was like kind of, in that, and that is the challenge to the backyard, is that I'm so used to putting, mindless miles, 5, 6, 7 miles at a time, and you just don't have that luxury, on a closed loop course like this. But when it's 2 a.m. and you're 60 miles in and you're passing guys or you're seeing other guys running, you can tell who's struggling at that time and who's doing fine. Just their heads down, the look on their face, their breathing. And I think, Jason was recognizing that, like, we just looked solid the whole way through, right? Where there was no visible grind.
And he happened to be in a struggle at that moment, I think.
Right. And, so yeah, all things considered, the first 18 laps, do they call them yards? Is that what everybody calls them?
I
don't know why. That bugs me. I'm going to call them laps.
Well, it's a backyard ultra, so it's you're going around a yard. So it's
1 yard. Yeah, okay.
Whatever, lap yard.
The first 18 laps, the 18th lap, obviously, I pulled back, but they were really solid, and we were, consistent, and both came back. Generally, I think you were a little bit quieter during the break on some of those early morning laps. When we're back at the camp.
Get into what I want to get into that strategy in a bit.
Right.
I was kind of trying to sleep, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Not so much from discomfort. So, but I want to talk about the night. Like, so it's our first full night run that you and I tried to do it, and I made it to like 1 or 2 o'clock once. I got pretty loopy. I literally, I was. I mean, I really was drunk. I literally felt drunk. I mean, I even sat down in the chair and closed my eyes. I'm like, the room is spinning like I'm hammered drunk.
Really?
I mean, I was like, there was points where it's like, I think I even told you, I'm looking at the sign. I know we figured out that the signs are on the left. It means we turn right. There's arrows, there's tape, and I'd sit there and I'm like running the hill, like I can't figure out what to do. My brain like was
No.
just so slow at processing everything. It
Yeah.
was just
Yeah.
one foot in front of the other. Did you get very loopy or?
No, I didn't. And I kind of expected that. I mean, it's funny because I mean, I wake up early and I go to bed early, and I get really cranky at the end of the night. Like if I have the kids and it's like 9 o'clock and they're loud and rambunctious, and I'm like trying to go to bed, that's when I'm pretty cranky. But I also kind of expected that I was going to be fine with the lack of sleep for whatever reason. That didn't really. I mean, it was an unknown, but it didn't really bother me, and I didn't feel like there was any kind of lack of sharpness from sleep, at least.
Right. Yeah, and I don't even know if it was sleep, just mental fatigue probably is more what it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not being used to it. I enjoyed the night tremendously though. The acorns falling, the silence, it was funny that it seemed to me like we got grouped more together as at nighttime we kept running into people.
Right. Well, I think at that point everybody is pretty well locked into a strategy, right? Everybody's kind of running the same lap. They're all pretty close in concept. And the other thing I liked about the night was one of so Jason saying we were running strong was really motivating, and then the other one was when we got down to the final 10.
I wasn't even say that.
I wasn't paying attention. And do you remember when it was? I don't.
I wish I did. I'm sure we could look it up pretty easy.
11 p.m., 12 p.m., something like maybe.
My head was going to say like 2, but.
Okay, so yeah, so after midnight, and I wasn't paying attention.
I remember we had a conversation. I want to say the lap previously where I said, "Is there any girls left?" I'm like, "I don't think I saw any girls left," and you were kind of like, "Oh, I'm not sure," and just kind of talking because there was still a crew, and it feels like the next lap is like final 10. Yeah, caught off guard.
Yeah,
that was a cool feeling because that was like
that pumped me up quite a bit, and then you get to know the final 10 and kind of who's hanging in there, and the nighttime it's hard to get to that stage, and you're in the pack of folks that are going to make it to the morning, So I think the nighttime was my favorite part. That like 1 to 3 a.m. When I wasn't having any issues, we were running strong. There was only a couple people left. I was really hopeful at that point.
The strategy felt good. Yeah. Some of the guys that you expect to be doing really well didn't look great at times as we were passing them. Right. The guy that was like going out the fastest, who ended up in second place, I believe. Yeah. We never saw him because he was always way out.
Always in front. Right.
Towards the end, I'm like, I'm not even. I know everybody else. Who the hell is this guy?
I know.
I don't know if I told you, but D was kind of talking to a lot of the family members in between.
Yeah.
And they're like, we tell him every lap to slow down. Like early on, they're like, run with Ben and JT. That literally they were saying that to him. Like, run that pace. What are you doing? Why are you running so fast? I wonder if he regrets it now. If he.
Yeah.
Because
I was really surprised and impressed, to be honest. Even to go 30 miles, 30 laps, at that pace is a whole nother ball game. You get more break, but I honestly think the more break at the later stage of the race is a challenge. It's something you have to manage for sure.
Yeah. So there's the point where was it 5 a.m. You and I just started the lap, and I'm like, is that light on the clouds in the distance? And you're like, yeah, that's the sun coming up. My head went like that. I was loopy, tired, whatever.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I was in daytime. I was fresh. I was loose. I mean, it was shocking to me how quickly that changed.
Right.
I don't know if you felt anything like just seeing daylight.
Yeah. I mean, and we had always kind of assumed that was going to be the case, right? Just get through the night, see the sun, and it's like a new day. It's okay that the previous miles are behind us. This is kind of the next day. This is the next chapter. And I had other issue going on at the same time. So, but in some ways, I actually really like the dark running. And
Right.
so as the sun was coming up, I don't know, there was just something about it that was not as invigorating as I thought it was going to be. It was a little bit more daunting in the fact that it was like, okay, this is day 2,
Right.
So, but yeah, it was, that was a big milestone to get to run through the night.
So one thing you had done and I hadn't done, so you had done a 91-mile run, and you've been telling me how surprisingly comfortable you had felt during a lot of that run.
Yeah.
I hadn't gone that far. I think 65 maybe it was the longest or in that ballpark. Come morning, I mean, I was blown away that I had maybe 10, 15 minutes here or there where my brain started to go in a negative direction. I was able to quickly kind of, I'm okay with where I'm at. You're okay. Just handle it. In my head, I was picturing a lot of like, I got to be okay with being very uncomfortable and just deal with that for a long period of time. I wasn't uncomfortable. It was shocking to me, like how comfortable that whatever 60 miles was.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you were feeling, but I mean, I didn't really have.
First 71 miles, I every mile felt the same. I mean, just no issues. Yeah.
The only parts getting out of the chair and starting I had like the first half mile was just kind of like get my body loose again.
Yeah.
Besides that, which was a discomfort, which I told you early on, I'm like, I feel like I know that this is gonna, by the time I get around the field, it's gonna be gone, and it was every single time. So it was kind of like I just got to deal with this for that whatever 5-10 minutes. Yeah.
Right.
And I was surprised.
I was. Yeah. I mean, I was really cold. 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. Like there was like 3 starting points where I was shivering, and that was rough. But
the blanket was huge, wasn't it? Because you
helped
started
a lot.
doing the blanket towards. I would sit in the chair and I'd be like warm, comfortable. D would be like, "You want a blanket or whatever?" No, I'm good. I'm good. And then as soon as I stood up, I would just start shivering, like out of nowhere. I think my back's against the chair, and then you stand up, and now cold air is hitting your back or whatever. Yeah, the blanket was key, and I noticed that you started doing it later on too.
Yeah, because that first, I mean, when I was shivering at the starting line, I knew I was going to warm up after the first half mile, like you said, but that's like an unnecessary mental barrier to like starting, right? You're just like adding one more thing to it.
And you don't want to overlayer because then you're too hot in the route.
Yeah. So one of the lessons learned was towards midnight, everything under the tent that I had set up was exposed and collecting dew and getting wet. And so I moved my clothing bags inside your tent, and I knew where they were in the bag, like what I wanted and where it was in the bag, but having to go into the tent and pull it out, and there was a couple times where I wanted to change some gear to dry out, and then I just said, forget it, because it's in the tent and I don't want to mess with it. And that led to me being colder than I should have been because I was, running in wet gear.
Yep.
So having something like you had, like a cabinet where you can have your dry clothes covered so you can just grab it quickly, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, that worked out good.
Yeah.
And I know that the sides for those little pop-up tents aren't very expensive. I had condensation and dew. I had not thought of as a thing that we'd have to deal with, but that absolutely was a challenge.
Yeah.
And luckily we had a couple of helpers for a little bit of time to help us, move some of the stuff. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm shocked at how good everything felt to that point. So What happened? What'd you deal with on this run?
Yeah, I I'm I'm starting to think it's a nutrition thing. So when I ran my 90 miler, I in my mind, I know we had gone through that, but you know, it was a part of it was me getting back to the house and kind of getting back on the road and kind of locking up and not having the motivation to kind of grind through a death march to just get the last 10 miles. But that was also 19 hours, 18, 19 hours in on my 90 miler. And this, when I kind of what I think now is like a bonk, was 18 hours in. And the feelings were the same, which is why I think it's a nutrition thing. Is when I did the 90 miles, I was feeling great all the way at 89 miles, like zero issues. And then all of a sudden it was just like I had no wind in the sails. And I associated that at the time as just, you know, being on, you know, not having the mental fortitude to kind of persevere through. But having it happen again to me at mile 18, so that last lap when I started to trail off, what was it, 18th lap, 18th hour, mile 71 to 75, it was the same feeling of just like going from feeling great to just having no energy. Like I just, you know, an 11-minute pace turned into a 13-minute pace with nothing changing. So at that point, it was just like a complete lack of energy. And then when I'm thinking it, playing it back in my head, it was, I like almost immediately felt like I had a carbohydrate hangover. So I don't know if you like, if I'm going keto consistently and then I have a cheap meal like pizza on a Friday night and donuts or whatever, the next morning I have a carb hangover.
Okay.
Feel bloated. I feel like, you know, I can feel all of my fat cells throughout my body and I feel kind of sore. In the middle of the race on the 18th lap, that's exactly how I felt. And in hindsight, you know, I train and live pretty much low carb, high fat in general. And then all of a sudden the day of the race, I'm taking in basically 100% of my nutrition from carbohydrates.
Right.
I think my body's just not processing that. And it's just getting to a point where I just don't have the energy. You know, it's not like, it's like, this isn't the energy that we train on. This isn't the energy that we want. And also the next day, I've never been more bloated after a race than this one. I mean, I was swollen,
really,
like significantly, face, arms, legs. So I think a combination of, I think I maybe had too much sodium and way too much carbohydrates. And ultimately I just ran out of energy. So I'm going to change that on the next one and see if that helps. Cause it wasn't like a slow, gradual, like where I'm just like, I don't, it was just an abrupt, like I can't run right now. Right.
Right. You don't, so do you think you need less carbs or do you need to train more with carbs?
No, I hate carbs. And that's why it doesn't make any sense for me to race with carbs.
Right.
Like I'm carb sensitive. Yeah. I never have felt good on it. I don't feel like they provide me with the right kind of energy. If I do have a cheat meal and I eat carbs, it throws me off for 2 or 3 days. So I feel my best on 80% fat. And I'm going back to that, and I'm gonna want to go back to a lot more, you know, strict and a little bit more scientific. And then, I mean, I was just rewatching the Zach Bitter, Lex Friedman podcast today, to kind of get his perspective on it. And like, he will introduce carbs, but I was doing like 70, 80 grams of carbs an hour on average.
But
and he'll do
mostly sugar, right?
And it's mostly fructose, you know, and with no fat, you know, no protein really to speak of. And he's doing more like 10 to 15 grams an hour. And he stays low carb all the way up until the day of the race, right? So there's no carb loading the night before. So I'm going to give that a try. And I really do think that from a nutrition perspective, because there's no reason I should be going from feeling amazing at mile 75 to being unable to finish a lap at mile 78.
Right. And it really, this type of race we're burning, I mean, like carb loading doesn't make any sense because we're not exploding out and need fast, and
Right.
we're running at a pace where our heart rate is actually staying pretty low. We're just a slow burn, which actually fat does make a lot of sense for that.
Yeah.
I know, but you did have the was it the nut butter that tasted like dog food or whatever it was.
Yeah, and I haven't done enough I haven't done enough work to figure out what's out there for resource. Right. Again, I was looking at Zach Bitter, and there's actually like powdered fat products that are like taste like fruit sports drinks that you can put into your water to be able to get because I was like, I mean, what do I have for options? Like avocado and almond butter, which is really hard to do on a trail, right?
Right.
But there's options out there, and I'm going to start playing around with that. I'm convincing myself. Well, I'm convincing myself that's what it was for both the 90-mile DNF and the 75-mile DNF. And I think if I can fix that, then I should be able to open back up.
Now, you said you had a little bit of knee issues. Is that right?
Yeah, but that was early on. That was mile 35-ish, and it was just I think that was not training elevation. I was and then actually also as soon as I started going down the hill sideways where my knees were perpendicular to the hill, it had no issue after that. Nice. So just little things like that, like approaching a decline early in the race sideways or even backwards, like some of the guys were doing, sideways, just to take that pressure off your knee early on so it doesn't act up later on.
Yep.
Once I made that correction, I didn't have any issues.
Yeah. For myself, my toes definitely paid a toll.
Yeah. What happened there?
It's just the downhills, and I think it's like the last 2 or 3 laps.
Yeah.
More fatigue starts setting in. You're not squatting down. You're not getting into such good form as much. So you're kind of relying on the shoe to do more, and your foot is taking more. Because I didn't notice any discomfort until, like I said, the last few laps. And maybe kicking a rock here or there too didn't help.
Right.
But and I don't know if trail shoes would be any better for that, or absolutely changing the technique going down. And for anybody that hasn't been on this trail, we're talking about some steep inclines. Like these aren't. There was nobody running them because you couldn't.
Right.
It was too steep.
Right. We ended up with like 9,000 to 10,000 feet of elevation change.
Yeah.
That's significant. That's 2 Mount Katahdins.
Yeah. I did the same math. Yeah.
Over 18 hours. I mean and I train on a flat grounds. I mean, all the 2,000 miles I've run over the last 7 months have been 40 foot elevation changes. So that was a shock. Honestly, though, which is why I go back to my training was solid, and I really think it's a nutrition thing. Is you would think my quads would be destroyed, and they weren't. You know what I mean? Like I actually handled that elevation and that mileage just fine. Right.
Yeah.
So there's something else going on there that's leading to me not being able to make the distance.
Yep. I definitely think your squatting more helps you a lot. And that's one thing. That's the only thing. My calves aren't sore. The only thing that was sore was my quads. And like
really
going around the house trying to like squatting down to pick up anything was like brutal the last 2 days. And today it's pretty much gone.
Right.
But if that tells me it's like, oh, that's what you're missing. You knew you were missing it.
Yeah.
I think I'll start doing a lot of like weighted single leg squat kinds of motions at my house.
Yeah.
An interesting thing, our goal was 100 miles. I had that locked into my head. 100 is the goal. But then there was being top 10 was like, oh wow, that's pretty cool. And then I just started feeling like 100 is so achievable that I feel so good with how I feel now. I was just like so okay with what I'd done. It was a weird feeling because so I told you that last lap, I looked at my watch. I did my math all wrong, but I thought I had to run a 10-minute mile for a mile and a half to get in to finish the lap. I'm like, I want to finish this lap. I don't want to waste 3/4 of lap. So I gunned it. And then I realized when I got to the 4 mile mark and I had plenty of time, like 8 minutes to get to the finish line. I walked. I walked to the finish. I actually really wanted to like time it up. So like 5, 4, 3, 2, come across the line, like make it dramatic. But I was way too fast.
Yeah.
It occurred to me in that moment that 14-minute mile is actually pretty darn slow. Like, and that's all you need. And it actually is. Like, I realized then I'm like, I could probably do 4 or 5 more because I don't really need that much effort to make that pace.
Right.
It was surprising to me because I kept thinking I was behind and I was pushing a little bit, but I wasn't going very fast. And the last lap I did, I walked every hill, the full hill, and I was just kind of watching my time because I didn't want to fall behind, realizing how much it gave me a lot of confidence kind of going forward that like I can just kind of go really easy and finish more laps towards the end and just ride it out. So that was cool. Being top 6 was really cool. I was just so happy. I mean, 100 was my goal, and in my head, anything less than that would have been a disappointment. And I couldn't feel differently. I'm like, this year has been an absolute success in every way I can imagine it. For it to be that comfortable, I didn't deal with that much discomfort. If there's one thing I'm kind of ashamed of is I kind of thought I'd have to push through something, and it was relatively easy.
Right. Yeah. So then why'd you stop?
So like I said, this overwhelming feeling okay with everything.
Yeah.
There wasn't like I kind of lost my drive for like 100. Like I was like, I am good with everything that's happened here. Like it almost like left me a carrot to still have.
Right.
I don't know. It was a weird thing, and you start like you were sitting there. I'm like, oh, he's waiting for me. That wasn't a real excuse, but like, and then I'm and D's there. I'm like, oh, it'd be nice to go home a little earlier. All these little.
Right.
But it wasn't like I was letting negative things. I was just satisfied with everything that happened. It was just such a cool experience.
Right.
I had achieved better than I would have ever dreamed to that point. It was a fun experience. Like I was just satisfied.
Yeah.
It was the one other thing starting off the last lap I did was really uncomfortable. It took a long time. It took longer than the other laps to get like we come around the grass and then we'd usually run that first hill. I walked the whole first hill. Like it took a long time to even get loosened back up.
Right.
That wasn't enjoyable. And the one last thing is I went into this whole thing feeling like I was injured, expected to be having to push through an injury the whole time. And here I am at 86 miles and I'm like, I'm healthy. I don't feel like I'm tired, but that's it. Like I'm okay with this. Why? And I in my head I was kind of like maybe I don't get to 100, I get to like 94. I'm like, what's the difference there? Like I didn't get to 100, and then I might have messed myself up. And I want to say the downhills were brutal. I was so slow on those couple steep downhills, and they were very uncomfortable. That's when my toes started really bugging me there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I wonder how that race would be if it was if they took you off of the trail at night and put you onto a flat 2 mile in and out. Just wondering how that would, because the hills were a significant challenge, towards the end.
Right.
But
I know if you were still in it with me at the end, I would have kept going for sure though.
Right.
And that's not to like. I feel the same way I feel about me satisfied. Like I'm so satisfied for you. Like I feel like we have our little competitive things, but I don't feel that. Like I'm like this was a success in every way for both of us. We learned a lot, and 100 is like now I'm like 150 is more realistic. Like we're past 100, just with the knowledge. We gained so much knowledge in this race.
Right.
And next time we'll far exceed anything.
I agree. I mean, I do think that there was a couple of wild cards going into this race that I just didn't know. One was the lack of sleep. I don't think that's going to be an issue, at least for the first, 24 to 30 miles, 24 to 30 hours, right? And if you got into a 48-hour race, it'd be a different story. But that was big. Yeah, I mean, I think the miles, I still am very confident that 100 miles is doable. I feel like I'm just kind of knocking on the door and pretty close to it. I think I can fix this nutrition thing. I really do think that's what it is. And both in training and in racing. I mean, I think that goes both ways, is how you train, how you provide fuel and nutrition for your training, and then on race day, and I can play around with that. Because in my mind, there is a difference between, the suffering of just being in the event. I mean, at some point, your body is just going to get tired, right? No matter what, you're going to have a toe thing, a knee thing, something, But then there's this kind of artificial, it's not artificial, but this kind of other layer where you're doing something wrong that's leading to like unnecessary discomfort. That really bugs me, right? So for instance, like halfway through the race, I was actually having really bad chafing, and that was just driving me nuts because like this is avoidable, right? I could do something different here. So, and then once I finally applied the nut butter or the Vaseline, right, and it went away, I was like, all right, good, I feel fine again. So when it's like a nutrition related or hydration related and you're struggling and it's avoidable, I don't feel like that's like real pain cave work. I feel like that's just something that needs to be fixed. Right. And then you can kind of go back to getting into those long hours and long miles that, where you are grinding. Right.
Yep. What do you think about go ahead.
No, go ahead.
There's so much strategy in this type of race. And a lot of that strategy happened in the transitions, how long you're in the transition. How do you feel about that for what you did? And what did you do? Because like I said, especially once we get to night, I literally closed my eyes and zoned out.
I don't know how you do that. That's crazy.
What was your, did you stay on your feet most of the time? What were you doing?
I mean, early first 50 miles, I was not sitting down at all. I don't know if you noticed, but like, I would kind of, pick through the nutrition and hydration plan that I needed to, recharge on, kind of meander within the tent, just around a little bit. I think I started sitting down, at night, in the nighttime phase. But no, I don't like that. And that's why going back to, for me, less time in transition is just better for me. I'd rather get back out onto the track and get running.
Why'd you start sitting down? Like why change strategy at that point?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just take some pressure off the legs, right? But I think I liked being back at the tent. It was great having your family there and having, a little chit chat and kind of just, I liked the process of kind of getting mentally prepped for the next track. It's like, all right, I had, gum in one pocket, goo in the other. I had made sure I got the water that I needed on the trail. I mean, in the break time. So there was a good little like process that I went through every time I transitioned, but the shorter the better for me.
Yeah, so Jeff, I told you Jeff had kind of recommended. I've always, whenever longer runs, hamstrings get tight on me. That's always something I've always dealt with. Yeah. And I didn't have even a hint of that. I'm not sure how much my strategy had to do with that or just being in vastly better shape. But having my feet up on that foam roller, and he's like, put it on your Achilles. So you're stretching your Achilles a bit and keeping your hamstrings loose at the same time and moving my feet. So I was trying to do that, which I didn't have any hamstring issues at all, none whatsoever.
Yeah.
But when we get to the line, when we were down to like 10, I was the stiffest runner to start every lap, without a doubt. Yeah. I was definitely the most uncomfortable. Nobody else looked uncomfortable like I did. It's embarrassing watching the videos that I've seen of me kind of like, I look like I'm in so much pain, which I was.
Right. Yeah.
And So I don't think, I'm not sure if that was the smartest strategy, but I don't know what the right, I really almost feel like having a standing, a bike, sitting on a bike, kind of like basketball players do between, and just sitting and pedaling
Right.
and eating and drinking and whatever, but just at an easy pace or something like that would be a great strategy, I think.
Right.
Just to stay
Right.
warm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm with you. And my last, I haven't got into this. So the lap that you fell off me, your pace, all of a sudden I hit like a zone I hadn't been in. Like, and I put up my fastest lap. That lap was
Yep.
my fastest lap of the whole thing. I was blowing by everybody. It just felt, I don't know. It was like, and in my head, I'm like, if this is how it feels, I'm gonna crush 100, and then I'm who knows what the limit is. Like, I start
Right.
daydreaming of all these things as I'm blowing by everybody. Like,
Right.
and that next lap, I paid the price, and
Yeah.
I've learned my lesson there. Even if it feels really good, stay
Right.
the pace, stay the
Yeah.
like. I don't know what that was. I felt that before in other races, like in marathons. There's been points where like I feel like, oh, I'm feeling really good, and now I'm picking up the pace, and then the pace drops off. It's like the last, my body going, here's what we got left. I don't
Right.
know, but that was
Yeah.
definitely a mistake I made.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like maintaining splits is also probably beneficial, just because you're out there for so long and your body does kind of get comfortable with, the routines. Like, you're not pulling off, but you're also not pushing either. So it kind of just keeps your body focused. So, I think whatever the time is that you think is right for you, whether it's coming in at 52 minutes or 53 minutes or 47, whatever, trying to stick to that within your heart rate, within your heart rate zone, for 24 laps, I think probably would be the best way to go. Just to keep that consistency. It also keeps the consistency of the transition, where you kind of go in, you got your routine, do this, and then, or take a break, whatever, and move back to the start line.
Yep. To your point about the shorter, so after that lap that I went fast, I had a long break. That was the worst start. After the next lap, I intentionally like went for like 13 minutes. I was trying to slow it down. I got in, I want to say I had like 4 or 5 minutes. And that was, and I didn't sit down as much. I didn't do it, I just grabbed my stuff, got back to the line. I definitely was more comfortable starting that next one than I was before.
Yeah.
So without a doubt, especially later on, I think staying up. I'm very interested in trying to talk to some of the other guys that did the race to find out what they do in their transitions.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is just having never done a backyard like this, or at least this level. I wanted to err on the side of having more transition time just for emergencies. You know what I mean? Whether it's bathroom break or gear change, or I need to sit down or I want to sit down. Having done it now, and if you've got a good plan, you got kind of stuff laid out. I can see how I could reduce that by 5 minutes and still. I mean, there was a bulk of it where, depending on how I do food and fuel and hydration, I could literally come in at 57 minutes, go back to the tent, grab a couple things, and walk straight back to the start line. Without any real loss there. So it'll be for me fun to play around with that. And the only thing I would probably do differently, to be honest, which I think would make the time difference, would be not running half the hills but walking all of the hills. Right. So we ran up halfway up pretty much every hill. If we turned that to a walk, that would probably add the 2 or 3 minutes that would bring us into the low 50s, that kind of thing. So
I mentioned at one point, which we didn't do, but I'm like, I wonder if it makes sense to walk in. Like, you get to a point like the grassy hill about there.
Yeah.
Walking from there. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Knowing where is the point where you could walk into the finish line.
Because I felt like the one thing, so the part of I at night I would lay down, close my eyes, relax. And it was, for me on the trail, I felt like my heart rate was getting high and I couldn't get it back under control. And the one thing I could do in the transition, and if I laid there and really like relaxed, I could get my heart rate to come back down to a nice spot where I felt like, okay, I'm ready to start again. But I think if I started, if like, let's say we walked the last half mile just the walking alone, your heart rate would come down. I get that same kind of effect. You're relaxed, but your legs are staying loose. You're still in the motion. I think that might be another way to kind of attack it too. Yeah, there's so much to thinking to all this.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So end of the race when it ended. So you bonked. I tried to talk you into doing one more. I knew you were going to turn back after the grass, but I'm proud of you for going out there. Seriously, like,
right.
We have both said we don't want to die in the chair, and you didn't.
Right.
I'm very happy for you for doing that. Did you try to give it a go? Like,
no. I mean, it was equivalent to dying in the chair because I was towing that start line knowing I just need to walk. I just need to shuffle long enough for Ben to break off so I can go back home.
Still, you did the thing that we that like, you wake up in the morning and put on your shoes and go out the door and then decide. You know what I mean? Like, you did that. You gave yourself the option. I think that's awesome that you did that because you ended in like a little mental victory, even if you knew you weren't gonna.
That was beneficial. I mean, I could have. You never know with ultras, right? You can always, like I always say this, and I never do it, but you can always turn a shuffle into a run, right? You just never know, right? I might have jogged that first half mile through the field and then been like, okay, something's loosening up, but I'm just convincing myself it's a diet thing because it was not like so for instance, the knee thing, right? Like I knew at mile 40, I'm like, give it a mile or two, this thing's going to go away. Right. Just knew it. And sure enough, there was something going on in just like having an empty tank where I was like, even though I fight through this, I'm going to get stuck halfway out into this lap and, I just have to walk back, and not make my time, which it still would have been beneficial, but I wasn't getting to 100 at that point. There was something, physically wrong that needed to be corrected. And, so that's a good lesson learned. I can go back and go back to the lab and work on that. And I just, we've done enough of this now where like I've had training runs where, you do a back-to-back 30-20 and you're on the 20 and you don't feel good, but you have energy. You know the difference between
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I'm mechanically running. I just feel lousy. Like I don't want to be running right now. That was a different feeling than this feeling that I had, which is like, there's something wrong. There's, and I haven't gotten to a point now where I can say to myself, like, all right, there's something wrong, but it's still worth me like trying to get to 100. It's like, no, I mean, I'm not at that point yet. So I'm excited to fix it. My biggest, I don't want to wait a year to do another backyard. That's my thing. It's like I'm already starting to search for the next event, sometime sooner because I want to go out and do it again. I just had such a good time.
Yeah.
I mean, the event itself, from showing up in the field, being the first ones, me and you, like setting up, to seeing 100 and some odd people show up at the start line, getting through to the nighttime.
The first lap, Will calling us out.
Yeah. Jeff and Ben.
Yeah. It's kind of cool.
Like the whole thing. Although I will say, one disappointment, I'll put it out there for the race community is, and we alluded to this a little bit, but this was my perspective. And everybody talks about how, like, especially the ultra community is very like welcoming and like motivating, and everybody kind of works together. I felt like nobody wanted to talk in the first half of the race, and definitely nobody wanted to talk in the second half of the race. Like the last 5, 6, 7, like I felt like nobody wanted to talk. I wanted to talk the whole time. And maybe I'm like that, annoying guy that's chatting too much on the trail. But that was the one thing I was expecting to be different. I was expecting there to be more camaraderie. Hey, how you doing? And we got it in little pieces, but not that much, in my opinion. I don't know how
you were more engaging to other people than I was. Not that I didn't want to be. I was fine with that, but I thought you and I chatted quite a bit though.
Oh no, me and you talked like the whole time.
Which I gotta say that made it. I mean, it would have been a cool event solo, but it was so much more fun doing it with you. And Yeah, we chatted the whole time. I do think a lot of people were in their like you and I, we're 60 miles in and we're not even like we're still comfortable talking, chatting. Like it's still a fun run. A lot of the people in this race, 24, they're already at their limit. They're in their pain cave and they have been for an hour. You know what I mean? So that's part of it. I have thought, I'm like, I think I want to have like a list of conversation starters that will catch people off guard.
Right.
Yeah, not the normal questions. Because how many times did we say, "Hey, how are you? How you doing? Where are you from? Have you done this before?" Like, to me, that got kind of old after a while.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed talking with Jason. The few times we did talk to him, he was
like, and there's a few guys that were like, you could tell were excited to share the journey, right? I mean, that's my thing. Is like we're all out here, we're all suffering together. We intentionally, voluntarily came out here. But I also, out of respect to people that were really trying to compete out there, I get it. Like if to be honest, the next time I do it, I probably will be a lot more reserved because I could tell some of them were just like, I'm in this for the long haul. I don't want to expend any extra energy.
Ed was locked in. Like there was no,
even and he's a winner, right?
Even you try to talk trash to him. No response either way. Not unpleasant, but just I'm on a mission.
So I get that, and maybe I need to appreciate that a little bit more. That everybody
come on, we did this for fun though, man, and it was fun. Yeah, I wouldn't want it. I want more of that. I want more. One thing we did talk about though was going into the race, we really wanted to help other runners out.
Well, that's why I was trying to engage with people.
Well, we were far out. I didn't expect us to be two of the faster ones consistently most laps. So everybody was behind us. So that didn't quite work out. I gotta say, the guy that ended up in 5th place, just ahead of me, maybe 4th. I can't remember, but he was struggling really bad when I passed him at one point. And I recommended liquid calories to him. He went in and got tailwind, and then felt like a new man. I went out and ended up doing better than I did. But
he was on my last lap, lap 18. He was behind me for a good half of it. Right. I mean, I was struggling hard on that lap, and then we kind of jockeyed for a while, and I actually thought he was done, and he made it to 100.
Yeah, I thought so.
But yeah, no, but in hindsight, I just thought the whole event, my parents too were just blown away at how cool it was. You know, I mean, they were only there for 3 hours, and they were just like, they just thought the whole vibe, the energy, like just watching people come in, the way it was set up, they had a great time. So I'm definitely bringing the kids next year.
It was one of those things. I was thinking that like you could have like a party there. You like a bunch of friends and stuff, like family members, whatever. They could all you set up a couple tents and you could just hang out at a campfire and like make it a whole your own little thing. And then for the 5 minutes here or there when you and I pop in, you know, we're doing our thing, and then you're back to doing whatever you want. I think all of our family members needed to dress a little warmer. I didn't realize they were Dee was telling me how windy it was and how cold it was. I didn't even notice it. And we're deep in the woods.
We were sheltered in the woods, and I think that was the other reason we got cold when we came in the transition. And in addition to stopping, we were wet and there was a breeze, so that didn't help. But yeah, no, I'm excited. So I signed us both up for next year. So
I know you did.
We'll see what happens a year from now. But I just want to get a spot up front, and I want to get side by side, so we can figure out what to do with that down the road. But I went ahead and did that.
So I got one funny moment I got to share with you that I didn't correct you in the moment, but the porcupine moment.
Oh,
we see the porcupine. We go by, you yell back. You're like, and you said something about the porcupine don't need shooting quills. Porcupines don't shoot quills. You're such a city boy.
What do they do?
Pew, pew, pew.
They shoot quills?
No, they don't. No,
they absolutely.
I'm sorry.
They absolutely shoot quills. I've seen it.
No, you haven't, because they don't.
Yeah.
Check the Google machine.
I'm gonna YouTube it right after.
What do they fart them out? Like, what's the propellant?
I'm just impressed that I knew it was a porcupine.
The thing, it did jump the crap out of me though.
No, I know. And then, but actually, there was a mental delay between when I saw it and went around it to when I was like, oh, I probably should tell the guys behind me.
Yeah.
And they were way behind me. I mean, I didn't say it immediately like I should have. And then it dawned on me, I'm like, oh, they're going to run into it too. And
but no, it was an awesome race. I was pumped at the end. I threw up pretty good at the end. I don't know if you were there for that.
Did you really? So what's that about? Because I saw Jason throwing up in his tent too, and I that never happens to me.
No, mine was just stupidity. So I didn't feel like eating anything, but then somebody's like, "You want the end of your Amados?" I'm like, "Yeah." So I had my Amato, like a quarter of Amados, and then I had a gallon of water it was ice, like ice. It was a block of ice the day before, half melted. I just took it up and I just chugged water. Go. It just felt so good to chug water.
Yeah.
I threw up. The sandwich didn't come up, just the water. Like just taking on that much liquid into my system, all of a sudden my body was like, I don't know. And I felt great just after I did it too. It was just like get the water out. So that wasn't bad.
Right.
Oh, and I told you my something about Mary moment. So the moment I knew my race was over, I dropped my water bottle on the grass. I dropped my water bottle. I go to pick it up. Well, my water bottle was leaking. It was annoying the crap out of me. I couldn't figure out how. I couldn't get it to stop leaking down my pants. So I drank a bunch of it, thinking that would help. I couldn't. I was trying to organize it in my belt so it wasn't tipping down. So maybe that would stop it. And I dropped it. So I go to pick it up, and my whole body is just shaking, trying to get down to pick it up, like the guy in Something About Mary trying to pick up his keys. I finally get a hold of it, and I drop it again. And I'm just like, I'm an invalid at this point. I can't.
Yeah.
I felt. So that was the moment I kind of knew that was my last lap.
I was pretty stiff. I mean, immediately after the race, the drive home, got home and, took maybe a 30-minute nap before I went and picked up the kids. Pretty stiff that day, but not nearly as stiff the next day as I was expecting. Right. And to the point where I wanted to go for a run for active recovery, just because the last time I did the 90-miler, I went too long without running and I really tightened up, and that's what led to a back injury. So I think just getting that run out of the way on Monday morning allowed me to recover. I mean, I feel great right now. I ran this morning. I'm going to run Friday, Saturday, and then pick right back up next week. Hopefully, if it didn't.
The same way. Yeah, I ran in the pool yesterday. Which I went a bunch into the shallow end and kind of just jogged around where it felt comfortable. It just felt to get the blood going. Today I did a nice 17 or 18 miles with Evan cycling, which I pushed pretty hard. But
good.
Yeah, I'm coming right back. My toenails are. I'm not sure what am I doing. They haven't come off yet, so
they will.
They're going to, and they're not very comfortable. But I'm thinking of going for a run tomorrow morning and see. I'm very happy with all that. Yeah, and after the race, the survey that they sent out, I mentioned that I asked Will, I copied you on it. Like, what's the deal with it being longer than 4.167? And it definitely was. And he's like, he was very responsive to that. We're gonna check it out.
Right.
I feel like the suggestions that I made, they're gonna consider, and what a cool event.
The extra mileage doesn't bother me. It's just that I like round numbers and even things, and getting to 100 miles at 23 hours is not nearly as exciting as 24. Right? Just keeping it, just making it consistent with what you're trying to accomplish. Right?
And we're doing 4-mile loops, and I did an extra 6 miles.
Right.
I mean, it's something.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Yep. Awesome. No, as usual, thanks for doing this. I don't know. Do you have any? I think that's most of what we wanted to get to. Any other thoughts?
No, I'm excited to get back on the road, train hard. I'm gonna finish out this year high miles, go into the winter even higher miles. And then I want to try and get some races on the calendar. You know, when you and I have been doing this pretty much solo, just going out and running crazy miles. There was something about that last man standing event that I'm pretty addicted to now, and want to duplicate. You know, not everything, not all of my accomplishments I want to do on a trail or on a race, but I definitely want to have a couple of those to look forward to, you know, throughout the year. So I got to do some research there.
What do you think? What do you think your realistic? I mean, where do you think you? I mean, being real, hundreds for sure. Falling next year.
Yeah.
If we're talking that race specifically, I don't see why I couldn't get to 150.
Yeah. No, I agree. I have not yet found an upper limit. Every time we do one of these, we put on more miles, but it's not just the quantitative side of it. It's what you learn from your failures. I mean, this is the reason why we're doing this. Is the quintessential. You have to go out and suffer and fail in order to refine the process to be successful. And yeah, I'm bummed that I only got 75 miles and, you know, didn't hit my goal this past weekend, but I know exactly what I learned. I know I'm going to apply it again. I'm hungrier now today than I was a week ago, to be honest, because I still have that carrot out in front of me. So, and every time we do this, like I know, I mean, I can run 75, 80, 90 miles without even blinking an eye right now. And that's crazy from a year ago to think that I can do that. So there is no upper limit right now, which is why this whole thing is exciting, because I have years of experience in front of me that I can just keep pushing the limit, you know?
Yeah. As long as I keep going, the years for you keep getting further out too.
What's that?
Because I'm so much older.
Oh, I know. But look at what Ed did. It was 57, man. I mean, there is no limit here. And that's why this whole thing is so excited. I'm like, okay, I'm 41. I'm basically a toddler in the game of backyard ultra, which, by the way, I think if I'm going to pick an event, it's going to be backyard ultra. That was an amazing event. Like, there's something about towing the line with a bunch of people and just watching everybody fall. It was invigorating.
Remember, we were looking around. We're like, look at all the elite runners, like all the guys that look like legit runners. We're like, and I remember thinking kind of like we had said it. We were talking before the race, like next morning we guess 10 to 15 people is what we were thinking next morning.
Right.
And then watching the runners early on, I'm like, man, we might be talking 30.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of legit runners.
I thought so too.
I think that's kind of what made Final 10 like so cool. Like,
yeah, it was like a light bulb. I'm like, oh wow, okay.
Right. And then did you see that Ed and what's his name are nationally ranked, world ranked?
I know.
6th and 9th in the world. It's like, I don't feel like I'm that far behind Ed. Who knows what Ed had left in his tank? Okay.
Right.
And he wasn't in the ideal, but I mean, second place, I don't feel like I'm that far behind.
Right. Yeah, no, but if I'm 41 now and he's 57, that's 15 more years of ultra running. You know what I mean? I know I can get there, and there's so many more things that I can play with and get smarter on, and just, you know, the experience of it all. So, yeah, I want to get better at backyard. There was just something about that. I mean, I just going from point A to point B for 150 miles is like compelling, but not nearly as compelling as doing a loop until everybody quits. Like,
so weird, so weird, right?
So cool, you know.
It's such a weird thing, because if I told, remember we just did this little loop out here when you were doing your, how miserable that was.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, I'd rather go somewhere.
By the way, I don't know how you feel, but I never got sick of that track.
No.
Like, there wasn't a lap where I was like, oh, I don't want to run this anymore. It was, every lap was, I saw something different. I don't know. There's just something about it. I really liked it.
It really was. And the next morning I'm looking at my Garmin, and literally, like, it's funny, like there's points where you and I were talking, like, I don't know the trail yet. Like, even towards the end, it's like, I feel like I didn't know it. And I could sit there and look at my Garmin and just visualize every corner, where I'd want to be in that corner, where the trees were.
Yeah.
Yep.
I told the next day I went up to my parents for lunch and telling everybody about how we named the hills, which I actually really liked because you knew, you know, where you were at. Like, you're like, all right, this is Karen, this is Lucy. I know how to navigate this, you know? So, yeah, it was just great. I mean, I was the last 2 days in a bad funk because I get into bad funks after long races, like we've talked about, you know, it's yeah, it's the hangover. So, and the only thing about, ultra running that sucks is, like, I don't know, a basketball game. If you lose, you can go back and play the next night and redeem yourself, right? Like, it's going to take some time to get to the next 100-mile attempt, you know? And so I got to live with that for some period of time, but we'll get it.
Yeah, I'm a one race a guy a year, not including Millinocket. So
right.
But then again, I'm like, if D goes for a day on a training thing or something, there's a day opening, 100's dropping for me. Like, I'm getting up at 4 a.m. and I'll have it done by midnight. I think easily, comfortably. Like, there's no doubt I could have finished 100 miles that day.
Yeah, if you just went out and ran 20.
I could have walked it all, you know, walked. Quite comfortably. So, yeah, I'm pumped. I'm pumped. I think it was best. It was just so satisfying on so many levels. I'm not. I learned so much, and we're freaking elite now, dude.
I'm feeling a little bit more. I'm still not there yet, but I'm getting closer and closer.
We're elite, and we really are. I mean, if you think of all the other of the backyard format, there can't be many courses that are harder than that one.
Yeah, it's a
hard. Really can't.
Yeah.
With the elevation game, I mean, temperature wise, I mean, each one deals with their own thing, but we took on one of the hardest ones and freaking crushed it.
Yeah.
For rookies.
Right. Well, hopefully, if I get to like 125 next year, I'll be happy. I mean, and every year this thing's gonna. I mean, it grows. So, you know, you'll have next year. You'll probably have 2 or 3 people in the 120s and 130s, and that would be really exciting. So,
and I really, I mean, our idea we were talking about on the run, having a handout or something to like have people like, hey, if you want to talk about the race, I want to pick your brain. Shoot me an email. Let's have a chat. I think that'd be really cool. Just getting in. Because then you get to know even more of this community. I mean, think about next year. I mean, you knew a lot of the guys' names that have been there. Like, I didn't realize when we helped Jason with his headlamp. And you're like, oh, previous winner. I didn't realize he was multiple time previous winner. And we owned him, but we saved him and then owned him. No, but
at that moment, I'm sitting there going, because I knew he was one of the winners. And he said when we picked him up with the headlamp, he was like, yeah, I'm struggling right now. Like, and I wasn't. We weren't. I was like going, and I'm like, dude, I mean, yes, that was a very high performance for both of us. It really was, you know.
But we go into this next year, they kind of know us. We know them. And I think there's actually a little bit like, I'm sure all of them had a moment like, who are these two guys?
I agree.
I'm sure of it. And then to see us coming back again next year, they're knowing we're pushing 100. They're knowing we're you could see the vibe between like the 4 or 5 that have been there to the 100 before. Like they had a different like vibe between them.
They were in the club,
And I feel like we're now in that club. Like they know who we are.
No, I agree.
Awesome, man.
Good deal.
All right. Thanks for doing this.
Yep. I'll talk to you later.
Have a good night.